Great. So, the topic I have chosen is Man and Nature, the Unnatural Binary, Reviewing Relationships in Pandemic Days. So, the title might raise a few questions. So, my idea is to not let me say one thing in between. This is what I'm going to talk will have a bearing on human life in general, but with relation to literature, the language, the images I'll be drawing will be from literature, and the concerns that I'll be discussing will be related again to human existence in the light of the present situation. I'll come to the present situation after sharing with you some of my thoughts about the human condition on Earth in recent times in particular. So the prime thrust is about the relationship between man and nature, or the question whether it is why it is unnatural to have this binary man and nature. We have talked about days when man lived close to nature, following her rules and was happy. Since industrialization in Europe, and particularly in India, since our own industrialization, which happened over the last 60, 70 years. And often in our rhetoric, we talk about how in the past people were happier. They lived closer to nature and they followed her rules and were happy. And now things are not like that. And we often talk romantically about the dwellers of the woods, the people living in the forest, the Aboriginal people, and talk about their secret wisdom, how they have secret remedies which might alleviate the ailments of our own times. We say that the Aboriginal people have strange remedies which we should make our own. So we have always talked as if nature is something out there, and you talk about having a nature trip, and so nature is something outside us. It's in a different domain. In the green forests, the verdant valleys, and the immense solitude of the desert lands, where the quaintest life forms live their life far away from us. We talk about all that with great romantic zeal, as if they are excellent, beautiful things, very part of nature, and the forests, and the tigers and such stuff that live in the forest. We talk about them when we talk about nature. These are the images that come into our mind. Often deserts may not come, but by an extension, we now include desert land, everything in our imagination when we talk about nature. So nature is something out there. It's in another domain altogether. And we have great interest in nature programs in the television. We have nature channels, which uh, often is a favorite thing for many of us, which brings these faraway natural objects to us who live predominantly in highly urban landscapes, even in the rural areas where most of us work. We are in a more or less urbanized circumstance with the nature somewhere far away. That is the general human, what shall we say, view of nature these days. This is how I have felt from my readings and my interaction with my fellow beings. And there is also, particularly in the last 10 years or 15 years, a great predilection for natural products. If you have on the label natural and with no chemicals added, etc., and we go for that. We go for that. So, my point here is that the attitude we have, the conception we have about our relation with nature is as if nature is something out there and we are here to take benefits from nature in different ways. Nature is great, superb thing. It's lovely, it's beautiful, it gives us everything, and the natural products are the best. We know all that instinctively. And we see also we have high priests of nature in literature and art. We look upon people like Wordsworth or Thoreau and Frost in the Western world, and in Indian background we have our own regional high priests of nature. In Malayalam, I have my own people. Every one of us from different parts of India will have our own local poets, our own regional poets who have written wonderful poetry, have written excellent works on nature. So they interpret nature for us, and they have learned mighty lessons from nature, and they teach us. They have many things to teach us. Like a single impulse from the vernal wood can teach us more of man, of all that stuff. We have high priests of nature. We talk about invariably students during Viva Voce exams when we ask who is your favorite poet, they said Wordsworth is my favorite poet. Why is that so? Because he is a high priest of nature. How do you know he is a high priest of nature? Because he has written a remarkable poem named Daffodils. Well, you have that. We generally think of nature as something marvelous, something mysterious, something wonderful, something benign, but something away from us. So, yeah, that's it. All the while, we human beings, Homo sapiens, have been outside nature. We have been priding ourselves as the prime creation for whom perhaps nature even exists. And we even condescendingly believe that we have an ability to protect nature. We have banners everywhere: protect nature, conserve nature, and we do it as if we say protect the poor man in the street. It's an act of charity on our part, protecting nature. Well, indeed, that makes you wonder what a piece of work is man. Such great nobility we have in wanting to protect nature. But I'd like to deconstruct this view a bit and ask questions like, who are we to protect nature, and does nature need protection? Okay, so we pride ourselves as the roof and crown of things, Tennyson. Everything is made for us. But I'd like to take I'd like us to move to another realm, which is this Gaia hypothesis. Now, the hypothesis is that Earth is the largest living thing in the solar system. So it's not the blue whale that's the largest living thing on Earth. Rather, Earth is the largest living thing. Earth is not a dead thing, it's a living thing, a single living thing. That is basically what Gaia hypothesis is all about. And interestingly, to this notion, it was William Golding who gave the name Gaia. Golding and Lovelock were neighbors at that time, and Golding passed away decades back, and we know, and Lovelock is now 100 years old. He's still alive, and very much active. Yeah, that's another interesting thing about him. And he came up with this hypothesis. So what he says is that we are not exactly the roof and crown of things. We are just part of a huge entity, with a vital role to play. So that is, I'm not going into details of Gaia hypothesis. I just want us to know that this is very convenient for us people who deal with humanistic aspects as an image for looking at what we call nature. I like to define this word nature and get it more clear so that we have our perception also a bit clearer. Well, I would like to relate Gaia hypothesis with the concept of deep ecology, which again most of you would know, we have eco-criticism, and deep ecology is more of a philosophy, which is deeply rooted on science, of course, which believes that you have the image here of biosphere. So rather, nature would be a layman's term. What biosphere would be the term that a more advanced learner who would like to look critically at the whole thing would use. You have the biosphere. Biosphere is the part of Earth in which life exists. Atmosphere. Wherever there is air, there is life. There is bacteria, some kind of organism. And you have the hydrosphere, which is the water bodies of the world. And we have the lithosphere, which is the land part, where you have millions of organisms which you can see and which you cannot live. So you have this notion that deep ecology says that you have all the organisms living together, helping each other and supporting each other, and without this mutual support, the whole system will collapse. So that is central to the concept of deep ecology, and that is basically what Gaia hypothesis also says. So the deep ecology is central argument is that the living environment is a subtle balance. Living environment is where we live. It's not just the earth, it's the ocean, it's the atmosphere. It's a subtle balance of very complex interrelationships in which the existence of organisms depend the existence depends on the existence of all others. So, well, the thing, the chain of life, etc. Not dwelling a lot on that. And why did I say that it's an unnatural binary? That man and nature. Why is it unnatural? Because essentially, whether we go by the metaphor of a single living organism, a huge behemoth, we are like a set of cells in a vast body that is the biosphere. So our relation with nature is different. We always seem to look at nature as something external, but we essentially deep inside we have need to have this conviction that we are we are part of it. We are essentially not somebody, a tourist who would take a bus and go and to look at nature. We are part of nature, and you have many images coming out these days of human beings being inside the houses and the animals looking at us from outside, as in a different kind of zoo menagerie setup. So we need to look at that. We should no longer think of human beings as people who would protect and appreciate nature. We should think of ourselves as being part of this huge complex thing. I would say that we human beings are like the foliage that create the facade of the woods. So you have a beautiful forest and you have the leaves, but these leaves are not the thing. You see only the leaves, but these leaves will change. Next season, you see a whole new set of leaves. So don't think that the woods are the leaves. Just like that, human beings are like the foliage that create the facade of the woods, which will fall and be replaced over time. So over the history of the earth, the planet, we have occupied only a very short period. Human beings appeared only around 200,000 years or so ago, Homo sapiens. And we have come to this kind of developed stage in the last 100 years or 120 years. It's amazing. We have been around for such a long period of time related to a human life. But compared to the huge time span in which the earth has formed, we have occupied a small space. Other things have been here before us. Many other species have gone, and then we have come. So and what we usually call nature or whatever is the perennial rocks beneath which hardly changes. Those things, the strong base, lithosphere, hydrosphere, etc., on which we come and go, are the perennial things, and we cannot make much change to those things. And so that's why I'm saying that we don't have to protect. And but so my central argument is that we cannot talk about nature. When we talk about nature, we are talking as if we are out of it. So when I talk about my family and I, it seems that I am outside my family. So we cannot, but at times we need to talk about it too. So nature is a very convenient word. When we want to express the non-human part of the biosphere, it is good. But but it's dangerous when we talk about conserving nature. It's very dangerous when we think about talking romantically about nature. I'll tell you why that is so. We often think of nature in very motherly terms. We talk about. So the question is it true that nature is a very benign and motherly thing? This benign motherly things, etc., are again romantic kind of uh, uh, way of looking at things. But let me answer. Is nature a very benign and motherly thing? Yes, very much, because nature is a highly intricate, self-sustaining and self-regulating system. Well, this is something James Lovelock says. Earth is a highly intricate and self-sustaining and self-regulating system, and we human beings are one part of it, like a large patch of tissue on a huge body of an animal. Mother Earth or the planet Earth can heal its wounds and come back with amazing vitality. We have seen over time how even through human interaction we have destroyed many parts of the world. Through our wars have destroyed large areas of Earth. Our nuclear tests have destroyed huge islands and deserts patches. Even before that, we have seen volcanic action destroying huge patches of land. For example, Krakatoa when it exploded, and all those huge destruction that happens in the Pacific region. But we see after 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, life comes back with amazing vitality. Motherly because Earth has this ability to heal its own wounds and come back with great force. But she is like a mighty beast, a big mother animal. She can shake herself up and send the vermin flying in all directions. She has that ability. In that sense, Mother Nature is indeed motherly because she has a great force to survive and take care of herself. But looking from a very limited and human perspective, is nature a motherly and benign thing? I would say no, because of the very same reasons. Nature or planet or the biosphere is a highly intricate, self sustaining, and self regulating system. It heals its wounds and comes back with amazing vitality. Like a mighty beast, she can shake herself up and send the infesting vermin fly in all directions. The question is, what if we are the vermin? The way, well, this is platitude. The way we have been behaving on the planet the last 100 years or a little more, and the Western world, it is maybe 200 years or more since in industrial revolution. We have been a kind of vermin that infested the mighty mains of the planet. And what Gaia hypothesis says is that if we put too much pressure on the Earth, later on people have used terminology like Earth has a carrying capacity. The environment has a sustainable carrying capacity. If we push beyond a point, it will collapse. It will collapse, and it will collapse, but it won't be destroyed. So our anxiety is not about the survival of nature. Our anxiety is not about the survival of the planet. It is, if you put too much the planet will shift to another steady state. The question is whether we will be there when the new state comes. So we have studied Malthusian theories, etc. When there is too much pressure on the Earth, Earth has a way of regulating itself, and that is in the context we should think about the present pandemic and so many other problems we are having. We are having this present pandemic being a big problem simply because we were not prepared for it. We did not know that such a virus was there, and we could not have the kind of remedies for that or a vaccine for this. Human beings have survived similar huge infestations before, but now it's a quaint circumstance because it was unprecedented, etc. But we should see it against a large framework of the earth trying to repair itself. In that big scheme, human beings may not have a big role. That is my point. Again, I use the same question: is earth a benign and motherly force? Well, I'd like to draw your attention to the story of Timothy Treadwell. These lines I have written here are from a man named Herzog, who took took a documentary film called Grizzly Bear in last decade. It's about a gentleman named Timothy Treadwell who would go and live with the bears in Alaska year after year. He would spend the summer in Alaska with the bears. This is a story known to most of you. But I just want, and what Treadwell's story is a tragedy, and he is finally, after year of interaction with the bear, he is finally killed and eaten by bears. But that's another story. But I want to draw your attention to the lines of Herzog in that documentary film. It says that in all the faces of all the bears that Treadwell ever filled, I see no kinship, no understanding, no mercy. I only see the overwhelming indifference of nature. So, this is a rhetoric which is slightly different from our usual rhetoric, where we talk about nature as benign and forgiving and sustaining. Here, he says it's the overwhelming indifference of nature, which I want to, which I believe is of great significance of the way in which nature should be seen. It has an overwhelming indifference. Nature, he doesn't take it in her, what shall I say, in her agenda to protect any particular species. It is, it's a survival of the fittest. And I believe, Herzog continues, the common denominator of the universe is not harmony, but chaos, hostility, and murder. Well, a very bitter way of looking at it, but I think that we need to take it seriously too, because essentially nature is a very brutal kind of thing. It can be very, very horrible in a way. But that is where I wanted to deconstruct the romantic notions we have kind of created around nature. Nature is not only beautiful. Nature is not only benign. It can also be all these. Well, this is a quotation from Michael Crichton, of course, Jurassic, who the gentleman who wrote the novel Jurassic Park, which later many of his novels have become movies. So we have Michael Crichton writing in Jurassic Park. The history of evolution is that life escapes all barriers. It's life, not human life, not life of any particular species. It is life. Life breaks free. Life expands to new territories, painfully, perhaps even dangerously, but life finds a way. And you might remember that in the movie, Life Finds a Way is there. And a gentleman, the character presented by Jeff Goldblum, says the sentence, Life finds a way. Well, this is not about the dinosaurs. This is not about the human beings. It is about life. Life is very indifferent. Life is nature. Life is Gaia. Life is the planet, the biosphere we are talking about. And it is rather indifferent. Another rhetoric that we have, which is related to what I mentioned the early days about the Aboriginal people being very happy and they having great wisdom and they having, they're living a life of pristine purity, etc. All these things have some issues about it. Particularly in Kerala, people constantly talk about how people were healthier in the past, how we had healthier food, how the native cattle before these strange new breeds came in Holstein, etc. came. We had native cattle which were fantastic. They had medicinal, the milk had medicinal quality, and then we had people had very healthy lifestyles, and the wildlife was pristine at that time, etc. But I would like also I like us to look at the flip side of all these things. We say in olden days we had organic farms, we did not use pesticides, etc. But there is also the great stories of continuous crop failure. People were helpless against pests. There was low yielding varieties of food. Hybrid varieties were not there. And one example is in 1840s, about 1845 to 49, you had 1 million people dead in Ireland due to potato famine. Potato shortage was caused by a disease in which much of the potato farm crops failed. And 1 million people died in Ireland in that time. And again, another 1 million migrated to different parts of the world simply because they couldn't live in that area. So this is good old days. And this native cattle, as we talk about, low yielding and prone to disease. Well, don't misunderstand me here. I am trying to tell you that these organic farms of the past, the native cattle breeds of the past, healthy lifestyle of the past, pristine wildlife of the past, and all these things we associate with the glory of the past, sustained a handful of people. And the laws of nature operated very harshly on these people. We talk about the healthy lifestyle, but people are totally helpless against diseases, blights, famines, plagues, to quote Tennyson again, cholera, smallpox, plague, diseases that would wipe out whole villages. People were totally helpless against that. Those days were good. The air was clear and pure. Everything is fine. But you had a small number of people, a continuous small population across the globe. There was diseases making youth grow scepter thing and thin and die. Again, quoting Keats. We think of Keats as a glorious romantic poet, but the strong sadness that underlies poetry, the strong suffering that underlies poetry is very evident. Where he talks about youth growing scepter thin and die, he's talking about young people dying of tuberculosis that consumes them from within. There were no antibiotics, there was no anesthetics to soothe you when your tooth is extracted or a surgery is done. Toothpaste was not there. All people had bad tooth, and people after 50, nobody will have any tooth in their mouth if you were lucky enough to survive after 50. Well, this was the state. good old days. I just wanted to look at that side as well. Totally agree that their healthy lifestyle was healthy. All those is true, but then well, it had this flip side, and we need to look at because I keep talking about the romantic notions. I'm not suggesting that the romantics, English romantic poets, were very naive in their notion. So I connoted that when I talked about the daffodils. Well, we think that people like Wordsworth, nature poet, wrote just about the beauty of nature, the daffodils, 10,000 that you saw at a glance. But that's only on the periphery. The English romantic poets not naive about natural objects. They could not afford to be naive because living conditions were very, very arduous at that time. It won't, you can't afford to live in a so-called romantic kind of existence. Throughout 18th and 19th centuries, the romantics were writing more on man, lost in the sheer vast immensity of the natural world around him. There was this love and admiration of nature, but there was all this awe for it. Wordsworth was a man as a human being. He traveled through the Alps immensely. And there was a time when he nearly lost his life because he could not find his way back to the place and he had to spend the whole night in the cold alpine mountains. His father died due to exposure in the wilderness. So to them, wilderness is not beautiful. It is filled with awe. It has all the huge force of nature in it and encompassed, embodied in it. So when we look at nature poets, when our students look at nature poets, they should learn to look beyond the peripheral beauty of the flowers. Example for the vast wasteland through which the Frankenstein's monster roams, and the elemental force that is embodied in the image of Heathcliff, all romantic products of the romantic period. The elemental forces in Shelley, the chastening impact on Wordsworth. Remember the Stolen Boat, where he talks about the chastening impact on him. All these give you a very different picture. So I am just trying to point out here that a romantic outlook towards nature is not a simple admiration of natural objects. It is something beyond that.